Welcome back to the number 8 plow channel. My name's Dylan, and today we're going to talk about number 8 plows. Sometimes they're also referred to as a number 8 little genius or a number 8 tractor plow. We're going to get into that, but before we do, we're going to get into a short history lesson about International Harvester and how they got into plows. The International Harvester Company was formed in 1902 with the merger of several different companies. While they did make implements and they did make plows, a lot of times in early advertising and literature, you'll see an International tractor paired with a P&O plow or a Oliver plow. International Harvester acquired Chattanooga Plow in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1919. They continued to use that facility until the mid-1940s. In 1919, International Harvester acquired Parlin and Orendorff in Canton, Illinois, sometimes better known as P&O Plow. They continued to operate in that facility, which they renamed the Canton Works, into the mid-1980s. But enough for the history lesson. Let's get into identifying the number 8 plow. So the first thing we want to do is make sure the plow we're looking at was made by International. We're going to want to look at the frame beams, and we're going to want to look at the top side and possibly the back side of the beams and try to find the maker stamp. There will also be a part number, but we don't necessarily care about the part number. The part number is only for the beam itself. We just want to find the maker stamp. And the first one we're going to look at is the newer style IH stamp. You can see here on the left. The PO part number there again is just a part number for the beam, and we don't necessarily care about that. This newer style of stamp you can generally find on the back side of a beam where they start to turn downwards. But if you do have this stamp, your plow was indeed made by International Harvester. And onto the IHC logo, the kind of round logo there on the left. Again, that PO number is just a part number for the beam, and we don't necessarily care about that. A lot of times this logo is on the top side of the beams. And if you do have this logo, your plow was made by International Harvester. Here's the last style we're going to look at, the separate IHC stamp. You can see off to the right the beginning of a part number, but again, that is just the part number for the beam, and we don't actually care about that. But here you can see the IHC, and generally this logo is going to be stamped on the top side of the beams. So now that we've determined the plow that we're looking at was indeed made by International, we're going to look at some other identifiers to figure out what kind of model it is. So we want to look at the axles, and you can see here the axles are mounted underneath the frame, and all number 8s had undermounted axles. And next we want to look at part number 31 in this diagram. They call it a beam brace, and all beam braces on number 8s were rectangular in shape. And some other plows that look similar to number 8s, the rear beam brace is more round and not rectangular. Next, we're going to look at the tail wheel assembly, and all number 8s have a fully adjustable tail wheel assembly. One of the big things is on top here, and it's going to be part number 11 in this diagram. They call it a control arm, and in conjunction with the large set screw in the top of it, it's pretty noticeable even from a distance. 3 models of International plows use this control arm, the number 8 being one of them, and the number 8 did use this control arm through the entirety of production from 1927 to 1961. But if you have this control arm and this style of tail wheel assembly, we can narrow it down to 3 models of plows. And since we're down to 3 different models, we're going to go ahead and narrow it down to 2. And this plow here is a number 10 Little Genius. And while there are some similarities, especially with the tail wheel assembly and the square beam brace, this has axle over top of the frame, and it is a deep tillage plow. And there are a lot of other differences with this plow and a number 8, but we can take this one out of the running.
And moving on to adjustment arms and quadrants, you'll notice this plow here has 2 adjustment arms. Some number 8s only have 1 adjustment arm if they are hydraulic lift, but if they are not hydraulic lift, they will have 2 adjustment arms.
Part number 2 is what they call a quadrant, and on the lower right hand side here you can see the end of the adjustment arm. The adjustment arm and quadrant on a number 8 both mount outside of the frame of the plow, as you can see here. You could also have this style of quadrant, which is part number 4, if you have a full frame or an 8L plow, but still the quadrant and adjustment arm mount outside of the frame. And now we can eliminate the last plow. This is a number 15, and while it does share some similarities like the tail wheel assembly and the control arm on top of it, and it does have axles mounted under the frame, you'll notice the beam braces in the back, instead of being rectangular, they're round on a number 15. And the quadrant and adjustment arm are mounted in between the frame of the plow. And so now we've determined that we do have a number 8 plow. And next we're going to look at some differences and variations in these plows. Number 8's used 3 different styles of lift mechanisms. This one here is a rope trip or clutch type lift. They also had a hydraulic conversion, and while this one here is kind of cobbled together and crude, this style of lift was an option for these plows. And here is the hydraulic only option. You'll see there's no place for a clutch, and this land axle is completely different than the previous 2 plows we looked at. You don't see it very often, but it was an option for these plows. And onto wheels. Some of these are going to be pretty rare. You may have never seen them before, but we're going to cover all the wheel options for a number 8. The first wheel we're going to look at has a 3-inch outer band, and it's pretty narrow. You don't see these very often, but it was an option on the number 8. And probably the most common steel wheel for a number 8, the 4-inch outer band. It's a pretty common wheel to find on these number 8s. And here is a 7-inch wide steel wheel, sometimes referred to as a sand wheel. Depending on where you're from, this could be pretty uncommon. And probably the rarest wheel option that we'll go over is the first generation of pneumatic style wheels on these plows. They only use these for 2 years in 1939 and 1940. They use a separate cast center from the outer steel rim. And onto the pressed steel rim. These were made in 15 and 16 inch. The 15 inch is a little bit less common, but these are a pretty common wheel design for number 8 plows. And sometimes you'll see these. They refer to them as cutoffs. Someone took a steel wheel and cut the outer band off of it and welded in a rim so they could have pneumatic tires. They did have multiple variations of the number 8, from a 1 bottom all the way to a 5 bottom, and from 10 inch all the way to 18 inch. Today we discussed the number 8 American plow. They did have a number 8 Canadian or number 8C, and they also had a number 8 whirlwind terracing plow, and we didn't discuss either of those plows. In the future we may cover them, but today I wanted to come out with a video on how to properly identify a number 8. I do see them misidentified pretty often on the internet and different forums, and they're pretty easily identifiable. And so hopefully now that'll help someone in the future. All the information in this video is factual, and it came from either real life experience from owning tons of plows, or it came directly out of a parts book printed by International Harvester themselves. That's going to be it for this video. In the future, we're going to have more videos about number 8 plows, and I'm not going to hint around to stuff that we have planned, but there should be some pretty cool stuff, I hope, and hopefully you guys can find it interesting. But that's going to be it for this video, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.